When a 6-year-old girl was put to bed in her family's home late one night, nothing appeared out of place. Her bedroom window was locked. The door showed no signs of being opened. By morning, she was gone without a sound, her warm sheets folded inward as if she had slipped out carefully. Investigators initially leaned on ordinary explanations tied to the house and the night, and within months, one theory quieted public panic. 8 years later, a forgotten toy played a recording that proved something far more disturbing had happened, transforming a presumed domestic mystery into a case that should never have gone cold. On the night of October 14, 1996, calm settled over the Caldwell home in a way that felt routine. A television murmured downstairs. The dishwasher cycled through its final rinse. Upstairs, Emily Caldwell slept with her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, her small frame curled toward the wall. Her mother, Karen, checked on her just after 9:30 p.m., smoothing back Emily's hair and pulling the blanket higher before turning off the light. Nothing seemed out of place. Morning arrived quietly. At 6:12 a.m., Karen pushed open Emily's bedroom door to wake her for school. The bed was empty. The sheets were drawn inward, not tossed aside. The stuffed rabbit sat upright on the pillow, positioned neatly. The window was shut and latched. The screen was undamaged. Furniture stood exactly where it always had. Emily Caldwell was gone. Confusion came first. Children hid during games. Children wandered when half asleep. Karen searched the bathroom, the hallway, and the closet. She checked beneath the bed. Her voice grew louder with each unanswered call. Outside, her husband ran barefoot through the backyard, scanning the fence line and the shadows. The front door was locked. The alarm system showed no activity. Police arrived before the sun fully rose. Photographs were taken. Measurements recorded. Officers studied the window and crouched beneath it, noting the absence of footprints. Questions followed, careful but relentless. They asked about routines, discipline, recent stress. They asked if Emily sleepwalked, if she talked to herself, if she mentioned leaving home. Karen answered through shaking hands, unable to understand how a child could vanish from a sealed room. Early explanations formed quickly. Investigators suggested Emily may have wandered off unnoticed. Sleepwalking became the leading theory. Accidents required no suspect, no malice, and no breach of security. Search dogs traced a scent from Emily's bed to her bedroom door, then stopped abruptly. Volunteers canvassed the neighborhood. Sheds were opened. Storm drains were checked. Woods were searched until daylight faded. No trail extended beyond the house. No witness recalled movement during the night. By evening, the language shifted. Abduction entered conversations quietly, as if saying it too loudly might make it real. Detectives turned their focus inward. The lack of forced entry raised uncomfortable questions. Attention lingered on the idea of someone familiar, someone Emily might trust enough not to scream. Family members were interviewed repeatedly. Neighbors were questioned. Backgrounds were checked. The town responded with fear disguised as vigilance. Porch lights stayed on overnight. Parents walked children to school in clusters. A white van rumor spread, then collapsed. A stranger at a gas station drew suspicion before disappearing from memory. A psychic mailed a letter claiming Emily was near water. None of it produced evidence. 3 weeks later, investigators leaned back toward a gentler explanation. Emily may have left the house unnoticed, confused and half asleep, and wandered farther than anyone imagined. Hypothermia was mentioned. So was disorientation. The absence of violence made the theory easier to accept. Momentum faded. Posters peeled from telephone poles. Emily's photograph stayed the same while the world aged around it. Her bedroom remained untouched, preserved like a paused moment. Karen washed the sheets once, then never again. The stuffed rabbit stayed on the pillow. On a shelf sat Emily's favorite toy, a pink plastic cassette recorder shaped like a teddy bear. Emily used it to record songs, secrets, and conversations meant only for herself. Investigators examined it early in the case. Nothing unusual played back. Batteries were removed, logged, and eventually returned. The toy was placed back where it belonged. Life adjusted around absence. Holidays grew smaller. Birthdays passed without candles. Time divided itself into before and after. Years slipped by. In the summer of 2004, Karen opened Emily's closet for the first time since the disappearance. While sorting through old clothes, she noticed the recorder again. The batteries were still inside. Throwing it away crossed her mind. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed and pressed the button marked with a star. Static crackled through the tiny speaker. A child's voice followed. The sound was unfamiliar. It wasn't something Karen remembered recording. Her hand froze against the plastic casing. What the toy played next would reopen the case and destroy the explanation everyone had learned to live with. The voice ended abruptly, cutting off mid-breath. Karen released the button as if the toy had burned her. Silence returned to the room, thick and suffocating. For several seconds she stayed seated on the bed, staring at the recorder as if it might continue on its own. It didn't. Karen pressed the button again. Static crackled first. Then Emily's voice returned, clearer this time. The recording sounded older than Karen remembered. Slower, uncertain. Emily wasn't singing or playing. She was speaking as if responding to someone just outside the frame of the moment. A pause followed. Then a sound that didn't belong to a child's bedroom. Breathing. Not Emily's. Karen turned the toy over, searching for an explanation. Toys malfunctioned. Old batteries caused distortion. Tape stretched with age. Every rational thought tried to surface at once. None of them explained why the voice on the recording didn't sound like it came from 1996. The cassette clicked softly as it reached the end. That afternoon, Karen drove to the police station with the recorder wrapped in a towel. The desk officer recognized her name immediately. The case file was pulled from storage, its edges yellowed, its contents untouched for years. Detectives listened in silence as the tape played through cheap speakers in a small interview room. No one interrupted it. When the recording stopped, a detective rewound it and played it again, slower this time. Audio technicians were brought in. The batteries were tested. The tape was removed and examined under magnification. The conclusion came cautiously. The recording had not degraded the way an 8-year-old tape should have. Magnetic wear suggested it had been used far more recently. That finding reopened the case overnight. Detectives returned to the Caldwell home with fresh eyes. They inspected the recorder's internal components. Dust patterns suggested it had been handled. The toy had not sat untouched on a shelf for 8 years. Someone had pressed its buttons. Someone had spoken near it. Attention shifted toward access. Investigators asked who had entered Emily's room since the disappearance. Karen answered honestly. Almost no one. Family members during holidays. A neighbor once while helping clean. A handyman during a brief repair years earlier. Each name was logged. Each timeline examined. The most unsettling discovery came from the tape itself. A background sound repeated faintly behind Emily's voice. At first it seemed meaningless. When isolated and enhanced, the rhythm became clear. A mechanical hum, steady and low. Audio analysts compared it against environmental recordings. The sound matched a household appliance. Specifically, a basement dehumidifier. The Caldwell home did not have a basement. That detail reframed everything. Detectives began mapping nearby homes with basements and similar layouts. Old interviews were revisited. Notes once dismissed as irrelevant were reread. One detail resurfaced from the earliest days of the investigation. A neighbor had reported hearing a low humming noise late the night Emily vanished. At the time, it was attributed to storm runoff equipment several streets away. The neighbor's house had a basement. That neighbor had also offered help repeatedly during the search. Interviews resumed under a different tone. Old alibis were tested against new timelines. The neighbor's movements on the night of the disappearance no longer aligned cleanly. Phone records showed gaps. Work logs were inconsistent. When confronted, the neighbor denied everything. Search warrants followed. The basement was cluttered, unfinished, and dry. No trace of Emily remained. No biological evidence. Nothing that could justify an arrest. Investigators faced the same wall they had hit years earlier. Then the tape was played again. This time, analysts focused on the end. After Emily's voice faded, a new sound emerged. A faint click. A pause. Then a voice, barely audible, whispering a word that hadn't been noticed before. It wasn't a child's voice. The case shifted from uncertainty to inevitability. The word on the tape was isolated and enhanced repeatedly. Each pass removed more static. Each adjustment made the voice clearer. By the final analysis, there was no question left among investigators. The voice belonged to an adult male. The whisper matched the neighbor's speech pattern with chilling precision. Armed with this, detectives returned with a second warrant. This time they searched beyond the basement. Walls were measured. Floorboards were lifted. Soil beneath the foundation was tested. Nothing surfaced until investigators reached a crawl space sealed behind a false panel. Inside they found a child's sock. Time had nearly erased its color, but the stitching matched a pair from Emily's room. DNA confirmed what everyone feared. The sock had been worn by Emily Caldwell. The neighbor was arrested the same day. During interrogation, he maintained his innocence for hours. The recording was played. The sock was shown. Silence replaced denial. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked under the weight of years. He admitted to entering the Caldwell home the night Emily disappeared. According to his statement, the recorder had been taken as leverage, a way to keep Emily calm. He claimed she was alive for days afterward. The toy had been used repeatedly, recording fragments of interaction, some of which were erased, others forgotten. The final recording was made years later. Curiosity, he said, drove him back to the tape. Investigators never accepted the explanation fully. Certain details didn't align. Dates shifted. Timelines blurred. What mattered was evidence, and evidence now existed where none had before. Emily's remains were never found. The trial moved quickly. The tape was played in court. Jurors listened in stunned silence as Emily's voice filled the room, followed by the faint whisper that ended 8 years of doubt. The defense argued contamination, coincidence, technological error. None of it held. The neighbor was convicted. Karen attended every day of the trial. She never listened to the tape again after the verdict. The recorder was returned to her in an evidence bag, sealed and labeled. She placed it in a box and buried it in the backyard, beneath a tree Emily once played under. Closure never arrived the way people promise it will. Answers came instead. The case changed how police treated cold evidence. Audio recordings once dismissed became central. Toys were no longer harmless objects. In training sessions, detectives would later reference the Caldwell case as a lesson in patience and overlooked detail. Emily's room remains intact. The bed is still made. The stuffed rabbit still sits on the pillow. Nothing plays anymore.